Oh, I almost forgot to take my mic off of mute there. What's up, everybody? Happy Friday and welcome to episode 6 of the Winged Eagle podcast. Hope you guys are having a great day and your weekend is upon you. And here I am for probably the final week on a Friday, maybe next week, but the week after that, of course, SmackDown moves over to Fox on Friday nights, and this podcast is going to move to Saturdays, and it's going to really kind of goof up the schedule a little bit here. But until then, we're going to be up on Fridays talking about everything WWE, All Elite Wrestling, NXT. Just like always, there's a ton of news to get into. One of my more loaded podcasts since we've done this podcast relaunch here. But there is just a ton of stuff to get into. We had NXT debuting this week on the USA Network, starting off with a bang, getting a 2-week jump on Dynamite that starts in 2 weeks, I believe, on October 2nd. And they started off hot with a really good show, and it really gets you excited for how the Wednesday Night Wars are going to be. It's going to be a fun time. We had a loaded Raw and SmackDown as well because this past Sunday was Clash of Champions. So we had the fallout from all of that. Big return on SmackDown with Brock showing up and challenging Kofi to the title match on October 4th at the Staples Center. I'll be there live, and that will be the first ever SmackDown show on Fox that starts and moves to Friday nights in just a couple of weeks. In addition to that, we're going to go through all of the, the storyline news in WWE, take a look at some of these angles, what we might be looking at heading into Hell in the Cell, and then do a huge draft update and speculation. A lot of rumors as to what WWE is going to do regarding the draft. They're giving this thing another shot, and I've mentioned time and time again that I have my doubts. WWE, they've said this before, and I know they're starting on a new network, so things might be a little bit more serious now, but we can count, half a dozen, if not more times that they have said, okay, we're doing a draft and we mean it this time. There's going to be exclusive brands, no swapping talent, no wild card rule, none of this bullshit. They've said this to us a lot of times. So I have my doubts if they're actually going to pull it off, but this might be the best chance we've ever had, considering that now technically they have 3 brands. Now NXT is on Wednesday nights on the USA Network, and it's not going to take long, for that brand to really be, I think, the top brand in all of wrestling. I mean, I would argue that it might already be that. And now with this new show on USA, Raw might be the C show. We'll have to wait and see how all that plays out. But there's lots to talk about there in regards to the draft and what they can do and what specifically they're going to do with certain champions and a lot of wrestlers on the shelf. We're going to talk about all of that. As you noticed this week, we saw some returns. WWE brought back Luke Harper, brought back Rusev. AOP had a couple of promos. And don't be surprised between now and the draft if you see a couple of other people on the shelf that might be turning back up just to remind you saying, hey, we're here and we're going to be drafted. Ronda Rousey, Finn Balor, Jinder Mahal, just random people that we're not seeing right now. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see some of their faces between now and when the draft actually happens. So that's going to be fun to talk about and fun to discuss. And like I said, this is just going to be a loaded podcast. As far as what we're going to talk about, I'm going to go in reverse. Usually every week we start out with news, and then we roll into Raw and SmackDown live results. If there's a pay-per-view coming up, we preview that. I'm going to go backwards this time. We're going to start with NXT. And then we're going to backtrack and talk about SmackDown and then Raw. And then at the very end, we're going to talk about wrestling news because there's not a ton of stuff to get into. I want to mention a couple of news and notes about New Japan, Tori Wilson. I've got a birthday shout out. And also discuss the Big Cass incident that happened, I think, last Saturday after my previous podcast episode. So we'll talk a little bit about that too, and I'll answer some super chats and anything else going on in the chat that we might need to talk about. For you football fans here in the States, Antonio Brown was just released by the New England Patriots. That is hysterical to me. He was there 11 days. I think he scored a touchdown. But the Patriots are scoring like 50 points a game, so hell, we don't need this headache. So they got rid of him. That's a whole nother drama for another time, and this is not a sports podcast. This is a wrestling podcast, but I did see that news come across Twitter not long ago, and I literally laughed my ass off. But anyway, like I said, we're going to go into reverse and start with NXT and then backtrack because I think that's kind of the biggest news, and then we'll talk about Brock, and then we'll rewind all the way back to this past Monday night and mention a couple of things about Monday Night Raw, including the King of the Ring finals and all that stuff. So that's what you can expect going forward here in this episode. Before I jump into NXT, though, I want to just go into the chat and say hello to people. For those of you who have been following along with these podcasts, I don't engage too much with the chat in the podcasts. For the live streams on Mondays, I'm talking to you guys constantly, but for the podcast, I like to keep this thing rolling. So I'm going to come back and answer some super chats, and anybody who donates and asks a question, it will be answered, and I'll engage a little bit with you guys here and there in between subjects. And I do want to shout out Steven Scott right off the bat with a very nice donation. Thank you, my friend. You are wonderful. Do you have a big heel turn on the Fox SmackDown? We'll talk about that. Oh, big E heel turn. I'm sorry. Possibly. You know, when we talked about that this past Monday, or I'm sorry, actually, we didn't talk about this. I think I talked about it in my mic drop. I did release a mic drop on the Brock Lesnar return on Wednesday. So if you want to check out my initial thoughts on Brock coming back, you can check that out. And I don't know if I talked about it in that commentary or not, but the one thing that concerns me about a Big E heel turn, as much as I would love it, is number one, he's extremely charismatic and funny and entertaining. And I do not want WWE to turn him heel unless he's a funny, entertaining heel. You know what I mean? There's just too much charisma there. I mean, every time that guy lotions his body up and dances in a sexually provocative way, I'm a happy guy. So I would hate to see that. I would hate to see Big E turn into a monster heel when he has so much to give charisma-wise. And at the same time, does Brock need help beating Kofi? You know, so if they do a heel turn, it might come after. I don't know if it'll come in and result into a title change, or if WWE pulls the swerve of all swerves and has Kofi beat Brock. We're going to talk about that later on when we get into the SmackDown news and all of that. Other than that, just want to say hello to everybody else, and Ratnick and Noah and Adam and Mike and TJ and Ungovernable, Beatles, Stone Cold, Brittany, Colin. Colin, is that you? Are you the one that needs the birthday shout out? Since I see your name in here, let me go down to my notes here. Yes, Colin, Norman Wright. Happy birthday, my friend. Not sure how old you are, but you did shoot me a message over on Twitter and ask for a birthday shout out. There you go, my friend. Happy birthday to you, and thanks for spending your Friday with me. All right, that gets the pleasantries out of the way, and pretty typical audience in here for a Friday afternoon. Probably only going to be 100 or so folks in here watching this live, and then the views will kick up this weekend. But anyway, let's start with NXT, because this is exciting stuff. We're going to talk a lot about NXT here, talk about All Elite Wrestling, talk about controversial comments that Kenny Omega made, although they're not really controversial. People were getting mad at me on Twitter about the Kenny Omega situation, and he did an interview where he basically, we'll talk about it here in a minute, but what Kenny Omega said really did not bother me at all. That's what I would expect him to say. It was kind of some of the reaction and some of the comparisons between him and Seth Rollins that was kind of annoying me. But as far as what Kenny Omega said, I didn't find it controversial at all. Something like that wouldn't even garnered my attention at all, because that's what I would expect him to say in the midst of this Wednesday night war. Of course we're better. Of course anybody on your roster is not as good as me. Kenny is doing what Kenny should do. But some hypocritical comments and opinions floating out there when they compare this to Seth Rollins. Yeah, but what about this and that? We'll talk about all that in a minute. But that aside, that's pointless stuff. The important stuff is these two companies are going to have wrestling shows going head-to-head on Wednesday nights. And I love All Elite Wrestling. So far, I think they're off to a great start. I have the utmost respect and love for Cody Rhodes and the Bucks and Kenny and even the Khans, who have financially backed the idea of having another wrestling promotion out there and trying to stop WWE from cornering this market and being the only game in town. Finally, somebody's coming around and saying, nope, no, you're not. We're here too, and we're at least going to attempt to be competition for you. I cannot tell you as a wrestling fan how happy that makes me. However, they are going to be in an enormous uphill battle, which is what I've said right from the start. And to me, WWE, Raw, and SmackDown were not going to be AEW's primary competition. Their primary competition was going to be NXT, because they're almost on similar levels. They got a similar fan base. You know, those smarky type wrestling fans, there's a little bit of that in all of us. We flock to promotions like All Elite Wrestling, and especially NXT, that can give us such good quality wrestling, you know, apart from some of the silliness and the lackluster creative that we see on the main roster, where guys are just being wasted. And WWE Raw and SmackDown are watered down, boring, rinse and repeat, copy and paste nonsense week after week after week, to where you have a bunch of great talent. When you look at that talent on Raw and SmackDown, it's incredible how much talent is there. It's scary. But yet the show gets ratings and gets fan reaction as if it's TNA Impact. You know, just like, oh my God, are you kidding me? This great talent that they're paying, you know, is being wasted and grossly and criminally underutilized at times. And when they are utilized, they're utilized in fucked up ways. They're working these guys to the bone, going out there and killing themselves for matches that in the end don't matter. And it's just frustrating as fans. So now we've got NXT and you have this new promotion, AEW, that is giving us a break from all that stuff. And so this Wednesday Night War, to me, this is going to be the talk of wrestling. This is going to be the most fun night of the week. And I wish with my personal life and my job and my schedule, I could shift some stuff around. I might try to be off for as many Wednesdays as possible, even though it's unlikely. But unfortunately, I'm going to miss these Wednesday Night Wars live. Currently, I'm off every Monday night. I hang out with you guys and I stream Monday Night Raw or stream my reaction to it. And we hang out and chat, but it'd be really fun to do that on Wednesdays if we could. But that's not looking likely. So I'm going to have to kind of catch up on those shows on Wednesday evenings. And if anything big happens, maybe come up with a mic drop before ahead of the podcast every Saturday. But I'm really excited, even though I can't be there to witness most of these live in the comfort of my own home. I'm so excited for the Wednesday Night War because both of these companies are going to push each other to be better. I mean, NXT's already great. They debuted this past Wednesday in an amazing show. It wasn't without its issues. There was a WWE Network issue and a couple of other things, but they started off with a bang. And that was a great way to introduce them to the USA Network and a more mainstream audience. They've only been on there once or twice in the past. I think the last time was 2017. And they drew a much bigger rating this time, and the show was great. And they're basically, they got a 2-week jump on All Elite Wrestling, and they're saying, hey, follow that, motherfuckers. And I think All Elite Wrestling will for the first couple of weeks because there's a lot of excitement, in their Wednesday night show. And I found it odd that they finally made official their name. The name of the show on Wednesday nights for AEW is going to be Dynamite, which we did hear about a trademark on the name Dynamite several months back, so we knew that was an option, but I didn't know what the hell was taking them so long to officially make this announcement. But AEW Dynamite will be on Wednesdays head-to-head with NXT on the new USA Network. Both shows, I believe, are 2 hours, and it's going to be fun shit. But anyway, as far as NXT's first show on USA goes, you had Candice LeRae winning the Fatal 4-Way to open the show. This was a really good women's match. I thought it was a great way to open, show the girls off. Bianca Belair, I don't watch a ton of NXT. I don't keep up with it on a weekly basis. I eyeball it, watch clips, catch a show here and there, but I'm not, watching every single minute of NXT. So I didn't really realize how much she's improved. That girl is athletic as hell, and I'm ready. I think she's roster ready, main roster ready. If you look at people like Lacey Evans and Dana Brooke and some other people they have on the roster, Bianca Belair is every bit as good, if not better than them. And I'm usually in no rush for women to get to the main roster, or anybody for that matter, to get to the main roster from NXT because of how they're going to be wasted. But I don't know if I necessarily see the women's title in Bianca Belair's future. So given her look, her charisma, everything she's got going on in the ring, her athleticism and her character, I think she's main roster ready. And I wouldn't be surprised if she turns up in the draft somewhere on Raw or SmackDown Live. But anyway, Io Shirai and Mia Yim were also in that match. Candice won, and it was a big moment for her. She came out, or she won the match. Fans liked it. Baszler came out to kind of confront her in the end, and this match will be taking place on the first on the October 2nd show on USA, which will be the first week going head-to-head with All Elite Wrestling. Excuse me, I'm mumbling today. So they are going to have a big women's match on that first show. Now, I have been saying all along, ever since Rhea Ripley burst onto the scene in NXT, and she had that match with Shayna Baszler on NXT a couple of weeks ago that ended, I believe, in a DQ. That's the match I want for TakeOver. That's the belt that I want to be handed over. I'm ready for Shayna to drop it now. If you guys have been listening to me, for the past year, I have predicted Baszler to win in every single TakeOver match she's had because I've liked her run. I've wanted it to continue, and so far, every opponent that's been put in front of her, I felt we should be waiting for somebody better. You know what I mean? Nothing against the women that she defeated along the way, the Nikki Crosses and the Io Shirais and all of that. Great women, awesome women's wrestlers, but I want to see a credible person come down and knock Shayna on her ass. And I haven't seen that woman yet until Ripley got there. And to me, that's a badass matchup, is it not? So what I'm hoping is that WWE doesn't try to one-up All Elite Wrestling by having a title change on October 2nd. I don't want to see, I love Candice. Don't get me wrong. Candice is a gem. But I don't want to see her defeat Shayna Baszler. And incidentally, I do see these super chats popping up in my peripherals, and I will be getting to those in between segments here, so just hang tight. But I don't want to see Candice be the one to beat Shayna as much as I love Candice. I want somebody like Rhea, a badass that's just going to punch Shayna in her face. And I'm now ready. What a perfect person for Shayna to pass that belt over to and possibly go to Raw or SmackDown if we can somehow scramble together a 4 horsewomen versus 4 horsewomen angle at some point, provided Rousey comes back, provided her finger is okay, provided Duke and Shafir are ready to go and ready for prime time, and provided you can get Sasha, Becky, and Bayley and Charlotte all on the same page again in time for WrestleMania, which might be asking a lot. Plus, they're going to be on separate brands. I think that whole thing's a lot to ask for, but it's possible that you could do it. And if that's the case, you've been waiting for somebody credible to take the belt off of Shayna. I think Rhea Ripley is the person, and she's the one I want to see be the next NXT Women's Champion, because I think she would be badass. And nothing against Candice, I just think Ripley would be more fun. So I hope that Baszler survives Candice, and then somehow, if it even happens, somehow that leads to a takeover match between Baszler and Rhea Ripley, because you know that issue can't be over based on their last match, right? So even though I don't watch much of NXT, I'm not crazy for thinking this, right? This is on people's radar. I'm not dumb. You know, that's kind of where I would do it. That's where I would put this match, as I would do it at a takeover and have a big title change in Chi-Town on Survivor Series weekend. But anyway, before we get to that, Baszler's got to survive Candice on October 2nd. We'll see what happens. Brand new North American champion. The other big match and big news coming out of the NXT USA show was Roderick Strong defeated Velveteen Dream, Undisputed Era, walked out with all the gold. We speculated on that. I thought one of two things could happen. Either Roderick was going to win and they were going to be draped in gold, or Roderick was going to lose and get kicked out of Undisputed. I thought it would be one of those two things. Tons of interference in this match. I thought Velveteen was I'm really glad they had a Velveteen Dream match on the first ever NXT show on USA, in a big match like that. That match was fantastic. That was a takeover quality and takeover level match. I enjoyed every minute of it. And at the very end, you had the entire Undisputed Era faction coming out there, getting involved. Adam Cole, I think at one point, even hit Velveteen with a super kick, allowed Roderick to hit him with his finisher, which Velveteen kicked out of in one of the best near falls I've seen in a while. And then eventually Velveteen would succumb. Roderick beat him, pinned him, won the North American title, and now you've got all those guys with Fish and O'Reilly as tag champs, and Cole as the leader there with the world title, and now Roderick with their version of the IC belt is pretty awesome. You can only go down from here. I don't know how long they're going to run with this faction on top of the brand on USA Network, and they're going to start losing their belts one at a time. I don't know who you guys think the most likely person to take the belt from Adam Cole will be. I'm thinking maybe Matt Riddle, unless they want to move Matt up to the main roster rather quickly. But I'm excited for what the future holds in NXT, and I think those guys, I wouldn't keep them on top for very long, because they're smaller guys. When you think of a big-time heel faction, you don't think of like small cruiserweights like that. So something about them doesn't really match up to me a little bit, but I think they can run with it for a little while, and I think one at a time they can start dropping their belts, and then you're going to have an inevitable split, maybe a feud between Roderick and Cole or something like that will wind up happening, I'm assuming, in the future with all those guys. But I'm excited for it, and you might even get a big showdown one day with Imperium, who also showed up, led by Walter. They attacked Kushida's opponent. Kushida was supposed to have a match, and Kushida actually came out and brawled with those guys a little and kind of ran them off a bit and challenged Walter. So that match might also happen on October 2nd. I'm not sure if that's official or not, but I really like that they are kind of incorporating not only 205 Live guys, because I believe the Cruiserweight title will be defended on NXT now, and the NXT UK guys, because there's some great talent there with Walter and Pete Dunne and Rhea Ripley, like we saw coming over. All those guys kind of showing up on NXT from time to time is going to make for an awesome brand. I mean, it's a hell of a roster there, man. I mean, that's why I almost worry, as a wrestling fan. I want, because I'm going to cite a Chris Jericho interview that he did yesterday here in a little bit when I talk about AEW, but I've been saying all along with AEW, it's an uphill battle, and it's going to take some time to get their wrestlers. And Jericho said it yesterday. He goes, "You've got 40 new wrestlers. You can't just throw them out there on cable TV in front of an audience that have not seen most of these guys before and say, okay, here, get over." It's got to take time, and you got to get everybody over one at a time. So they've got to work on establishing their talent, not only establishing their talent, but putting on compelling storylines and matches and all of that, going up against a brand that's running like a well-oiled fucking machine. And the talent that is here is ridiculously scary. Like I said, I think it's going to be the best brand of everybody. Fuck Raw and SmackDown. I want to watch NXT. I mean, this is going to be, Triple H is extremely motivated. A lot of people like to call WWE scared and desperate and fearful of AEW. If you have the heaviest guns, you're not scared. If you're the biggest guy in the playground, you're not scared. You're just going to do things to push people away, cock block them. That's what WWE is doing. And Triple H especially is, I remember the Hall of Fame, he made 2 little cheap shots at AEW during the DX speech. So Triple H, if these guys want to come after him, he's extremely motivated to make sure that his group of people, he's a mentor to all these guys. He has a personal interest in what NXT does. He feels like that's his baby. Vince has given him complete control of that. And I think it's safe to say, no matter what you think about Triple H or his time as a professional wrestler or any issues you might have with him personally, he's done a fabulous job with this brand, and he's created the most exciting brand in all of wrestling, arguably. Like I said, I'm not claiming that to be fact. I'm just saying, arguably, I think it would be hard to disagree that they put on the best shows overall, best quality-wise, than what we've seen. And AEW is yet to even have their first show. So I just hope that TNT is patient with AEW, because I'm going to be the ones that are going, when the fans, or when people that are taking sides here, and when the WWE audience, the fans that wants to see AEW fail, because there are those people, which I think that's ridiculous, when they start getting excited, if AEW isn't really off to the right start at first, I'm going to be the one coming up here and telling them to chill out. Big, you got to give them time. It does not happen overnight. Unfortunately, their fans don't understand that. They think AEW is going to be the king of the wrestling world week 2 into the TNT show. And I'm saying it's possible that they could be, but it's going to take a hell of a lot longer than 2 goddamn weeks. And so for those of you on the other side celebrating any AEW issues they might have, maybe they have a bad show one week, maybe the ratings are down, maybe the ratings plummet for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, before you get all excited, just remember they're a new company with a lot of new wrestlers that the hardcore wrestling fans know. We know the Bucks and Kenny and Jericho and all those guys and Cody, but we don't know everybody. And, if you have people just trying to watch two products, NXT, AEW side by side, and you don't know anything about wrestling and you don't have a dog in the fight and you just watch these 2 shows and you're just a casual observer, you're going to watch the most exciting one. And it's going to be really hard in my mind for AEW to out-excitement NXT. That's just my opinion. So I want TNT not to freak out. I want NXT fans not to freak out and AEW fans not to freak out if anything doesn't go to plan right away. Because I think AEW is going to start out hot and then maybe slowly cool off a little bit before, getting the ball rolling again. I think it's going to be a little bit up and down for them, where I feel like NXT is going to be consistent in their ratings, and I think AEW is going to be a little bit fluctuating. That's my guess. So I just don't think anybody needs to get ahead of themselves. And based on how TNT is promoting AEW, it sounds to me like they're in on this. It sounds to me like they're not going to give up on this in 2 months if AEW doesn't give them the ratings they were hoping for. I think TNT will give them a chance, and I think you have to give a company like this a minimum, like an absolute minimum of like a year to get their shit together, and then beyond that, then if they're on the network, then 2 years, 3 years, and they're seeing no change numbers wise, no change in figures, no change in attendance, no change in television ratings, and those ratings are not up to par with what TNT wants, then you can start talking about, okay, maybe we should boot these guys off the air. But none of that needs to happen in the first 2 months. So they're not going to succeed and overthrow WWE in 2 months. And I also don't think they're going to fail and go out of business in 2 months either. It's going to be an interesting time. And I think NXT, in a way, even though it's really, putting the pressure on AEW, it's going to put the pressure on AEW to put on a good show and to pull out surprises and to do things. If they're not going to be able to match up every single match, with NXT, they're going to have to outdo them in other ways. And they got a ton of talent there, and it's just all about where you place that talent, how you utilize them, what kind of matches you give us, and shit like that. And that's all going to be, behind the scenes stuff, backstage booking, and who they're going to push and how they're going to present their product, because they also want to present something that looks a little bit different, the wins and losses and shit like that. So I'm hoping that NXT and AEW don't look too much alike. And I hope that they are very, very different looking wrestling shows, to where if you are a casual observer flipping the station, you can tell the difference, where you're not, oh wait, shit, which one was I watching again? That kind of thing, to where you can distinctly tell that there's a difference between the 2 companies. That's what I hope for All Elite Wrestling. So it's going to be fun. But anyway, back to their first show on USA, because there was a whole bunch of great shit that took place here, including the return of Lio Rush. Lio Rush is back in NXT, probably where he should be. I liked him on the main roster, but again, he was one of those call-ups to where you were like, damn, he came up quick. But Bobby Lashley was in desperate need of somebody who could talk for him, and Lio Rush was good, entertaining, kind of a modern-day Jimmy Hart with a microphone on the outside of the ring, kind of like Sami Zayn is doing now. And he would always escape people trying to catch him. He's extremely athletic, and I had mentioned that when I saw him in NXT a couple of years ago wrestling, that kid was doing things I had never seen before. So I was surprised that they put somebody as talented and as athletic as him in a managerial role. And then with the issues with him, I don't know, demanding a new contract and then turning one down and wanting more money, he's got some maybe maturity and attitude problems, but apparently that's all washed out now. He's back in NXT. He had a match with Oney Lorcan to determine the number one contender for the Cruiserweight title, and he beat him in a really good match. Now, I know Velveteen and Roderick get the praise on this show, but don't discount this Leo and Lorcan match. It was great, and Leo won with a frog splash in the end, and just a couple of really good spots, and it really showcases how stupidly athletic Leo Rush is, and I'm glad he's back. And Drew Gulak, Leo Rush for the title, totally different styles, but I would be perfectly fine if Leo Rush took the Cruiserweight title, because if you remember when Enzo had the title, the point of giving him the title is giving someone a little bit of charisma, the belt, somebody that could be a shit-talking heel, and Gulak can do that too. Gulak's great, but Leo and Enzo, guys like them, I think are a little bit easier to hate. So if Leo wins the title, to me, it will be like Enzo winning the title, except with 100 times more athleticism, because Leo's amazing. So if he's the next guy to win the Cruiserweight title, that might be who they want on USA Network. Little Leo Rush can do some pretty amazing things in that ring, and he might be somebody that they want to showcase on a regular basis to their USA audience. So I'm kind of low-key pulling for Leo Rush to win the Cruiserweight title. I hope that he does. By the way, for this first week on USA, it was split in two. The first hour was on USA, but the second hour was on the network. So I guess WWE couldn't pull off the 2-hour show right away. Just goes to show that they did really try to get the jump on All Elite Wrestling. You know, they were like, hey, we want to come up 2 weeks early, and USA's like, all right, you can, but you can only have an hour or something like that is probably what happened there. So they had to do the second hour on the WWE Network. I was at work, and I was glancing on my phone on the USA Network portion, and then when I tried to pull up the network to look at the second hour, I couldn't pull it up. And I see on Twitter that everybody was having WWE Network issues. WWE acknowledged this after the show, apologized to the fans. Triple H, I think, even mentioned something in the media call after the event, again, apologizing. And you know what? That's okay. I'm all right with it. I know it can be frustrating when the WWE Network goes down, but this thing is over 5 years old now, and I have had virtually no problems with it. There's been a couple of times where I haven't been able to pull it up, or it might be down here or there, but it's caused me literally no headache and no stress whatsoever. And as long as something like this doesn't happen on a WrestleMania, knock on wood, and something like that goes down in the middle of the biggest show of the year, that's going to make me lose my mind. But if something happens, a little hiccup here or there, that's what you can expect with technology and streaming and shit. And I'm going to let this one go, WWE. It's all right. You can still have my $9.99 as long as this doesn't happen every week. Every couple of months, if you have a buffering issue, it's no big deal. And incidentally, I don't know what everybody else went through with the network on Wednesday, but I was able to pull it up after about 5 or 10 minutes. So I didn't miss the whole second hour. I only missed like the first 5 or 10 minutes of it, and it wouldn't work. And then eventually it did. So even the issue that they had, I think, was a very small one, but still unfortunate for the first ever NXT show moving to 2 hours and really trying to set the tone to what to expect when they go head-to-head with All Elite Wrestling. Triple H also mentioned in the conference call after the show that Vince McMahon was very excited about it, was texting him throughout the day, good luck, and loved the show and all of this. So Vince apparently was pretty supportive of the show. And like I said, it drew a great rating, 1.2 million viewers nearly, which is a huge increase from the last time they were on the USA Network, which is around 700,000 or 800,000. So again, unopposed, when All Elite Wrestling starts up, it's going to be really interesting to see how those ratings are divided. I cannot wait to watch the ratings war. For the first time in 20 years, I give a shit about the ratings. Actually, probably more than 20 years. Well, no, about 21. Because in 1998, when WWE took over and they were off to the races, the ratings became less and less important. It was a landslide every week. But now, with AEW and NXT, I can't wait, you know. And like I said, I'm going to have AEW's back because I do not expect them to win in the ratings the first few weeks. And before everybody gets too excited and starts celebrating, you got to remember that WWE's got a huge head start. 60-year head start and a 2-week head start on this particular show. And with talent that even though they're on NXT, many of them are probably more recognizable overall than the AEW talent. So if AEW loses in the ratings the first few weeks, everybody chill. You got to give them some time. You know, let them do their thing. Let them do what they do to see if they can do better than NXT. And then let's judge the ratings. Let's give them 6 months and then start. The first couple of weeks, though, will be interesting. I think the first couple of weeks of AEW's launch will be the most telling. If they have any shot to win in the ratings, it will be initially, which is why I think WWE might stack the show on the other side, and that's what we want to see. We want to say, oh shit, AEW's kicking off. You know they're going to spark a huge rating. Let's do something over here to make a bunch of noise to combat that. And when you start getting companies doing that to each other, that's when it produces the best content. So, like I've said over and over and over again, let's not be decisive. Let's not be argumentative. Let's not pick sides and hope for one side to succeed and one side to fail. Let's sit back and enjoy this incredible time in wrestling. Now, with that being said, Kenny Omega, I think, is over in Singapore. He did like an interview with, where did he do this interview? I have it written down. Shit, did I not write down? Damn, I'm so sorry. Normally I try to credit the people who did this interview. He's in Singapore, did some sort of an interview, looked like he was in a TGI Fridays or something. And he was basically just talking about NXT. And he was like, our talent is real talent. Their talent is developmental talent. I'd be willing to bet there's a lot of developmental guys with a hell of a lot more ability than Marco Stunt, but that's beside the point. The point is, Kenny Omega, all he did was stick up for his brand. All he did was say exactly what I would say if I was Kenny Omega, because WWE, NXT is kind of like a developmental brand. And he said that if anybody on that roster, anybody, was wrestling on the card that I was wrestling on, they would be in a dark match or the opener. Now, he might be right. Kenny Omega could main event anywhere in the world with any roster. He's that good. But to say that this insane talent, to say that guys like Undisputed Era, Velveteen Dream, Matt Riddle, Lio Rush, Killian Dane, Shayna Baszler, Rhea Ripley, fucking Walter would be on a dark match? Are you high? But that's okay. He probably was high. So am I, most of the time. No big deal. That wouldn't have bothered me at all. Didn't even think twice about it. But then I kind of see a lot of the reaction on Twitter, and then you got a lot of fans getting mad at Kenny Omega. WWE people coming after him. Oh, you dumbass. You fucking crazy. And I'm like, it wasn't that bad. What did he say that was really any worse than Seth Rollins? And that's where the debate came in, when people started comparing him to Seth Rollins. Now, all of a sudden, you got people mad at Kenny Omega, and then the people that are defending Kenny Omega are telling the people that are mad at Kenny Omega that he's just in character, it's kayfabe. I had teenagers telling me who's in kayfabe and who's in character, and that I'm being worked. Teenagers. Yeah, that's what they were telling me. Informing me what's going on. Thanks. Appreciate that. Thanks for clearing that up. But what I didn't understand was that I didn't even care one way or the other, but the fans were comparing the two situations, and then whichever side you're on is trying to cite other things. Well, Seth Rollins, his problem was he called out Will Ospreay. I'm like, no, Will Ospreay called out him, and then he called him out back. And then he called about his bank account. Yes, he did do that. Both of those comments were probably ill-advised, and he apologized for both of them. But that wasn't what pissed the fans off. Fans are full of shit. They're trying to act like it was those comments towards Ospreay and the bank account that made them mad. No, that wasn't it at all. What got your panties in a bunch is when he said WWE was the best wrestling on the planet. People freaked out. They were much more mad about that than anything he said to Ospreay or anything he said about his bank account. That's the excuse they're using now, but that excuse is bullshit. So when Seth made that initial comment, now I'm not condoning his Ospreay or bank account comments. That was probably stupid. But when he originally said best wrestling on the planet and people freaked out, I'm like, he's the champion and he's backing his brand. He's sticking up for his brand. Let me get over so I'm a little more centered here. That's what he's supposed to do. That's what a champion in his position is supposed to do. That's what I would do. Kenny Omega, in his interview, did exactly what I would do. So in my mind, neither Kenny Omega or Seth Rollins are in the wrong. They both said the exact same shit that I would expect both of them to say. Yet you got the fans freaking out about it. That's when I made the tweet last night of saying, okay, according to the audience, Seth Rollins is a huge asshole for what he said, but Omega was just sticking up for his brand. And then on the other side of that coin, you had Seth was just sticking up for his brand, and Omega was the asshole. Here's a newsflash. Neither guy was an asshole. Neither guy. Seth, when he did make an unsavory comment, he apologized for it and pulled back. But you have to remember that Ospreay and bank account shit is horse crap. That's not what you're mad about. You were initially mad that he said WWE was the best wrestling on the planet, and that triggered your angry AEW support twitch in your brain or whatever the fuck. That's where the issue was. And to me, I'm on both guys' sides. Hell, I think an Omega Seth match would be awesome in the future. I hope this turns into a personal thing between the two of them, even though the two events are unrelated. You know, if they start beefing back and forth, could you imagine that? You know, the top star in AEW and the top star in WWE bitching at each other. That's like Goldberg challenging Austin on Jay Leno. So I wouldn't mind seeing any of that at all. And I want to see these companies continue not to be vile or malicious or evil towards one another, but to be competitive. And when you have an AEW star doing an interview, I want him to put over his brand and maybe take a couple of shots at WWE and vice versa. That's what I want to see. You know, so you can't get all happy when an AEW guy trashes WWE, and then when it's done back, you can't take it. You know, if you dish it out, you need to be able to take it. And I want to see both companies. You know, I was marking out like a little girl during Double or Nothing when Cody came out and crushed the big throne and, you know, and the sledgehammer and the whole deal. Little things like that's what I like. I liked Triple H's comments at the Hall of Fame. I liked what Cody Rhodes did. I liked what Kenny Omega said. I liked what Seth Rollins said. That's what we need. And I want to see more shit talking happen between NXT and AEW. I want Matt Riddle to get involved in this. I want Matt Riddle to say, you know what? I could kick the shit out of every person on your roster one at a time. Just line them up. You know, I just want to see him get involved because during that Goldberg and Jericho stuff, Riddle was hilarious on social media. So I want all that to happen. I want to see the companies pushing each other to be better, and I want us to forget all about Raw and SmackDown. And I want these two shows to be the talk of the wrestling world. And I'm confident that it will be, at least at first. But like I said, AEW has got a long road ahead of them. And given what we saw on NXT and given the motivation on that brand and the motivation that Triple H clearly has, I wouldn't want to be in AEW right now. I'd be a little worried. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. I cannot wait for October 2nd. That's less than 2 weeks away, guys. 1 week from this Wednesday. The Wednesday Night Wars kick off. And maybe for that initial week, I actually will try to get that. I will try to arrange to be off just so I can watch this awesomeness. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, let me go over here to the chat. I got to answer a couple of super chats, and then we're going to start talking about Raw and SmackDown Live. We got to talk about Brock Lesnar and that whole situation. We got a lot to get into, and we've been going here for about 40 minutes. Anyway, let me go back down here and see what I've missed. I've missed a lot. Actually, I can't even read it over there. Let me go over here and see. Okay, it wasn't that much. Michael Abero, thank you, man, for the $10. You are awesome. What do you think about this as a finish? Brock has Bray up for the F5 on the way down for the delivery. Bray sticks his hand in Brock's mouth and slaps on the mandible claw, and Brock passes out. I think that's a great finish. We might get that match at Survivor Series. It's interesting you said that, Michael, but thank you for the very generous donation there. I appreciate it. Tomas, I appreciate yours as well. Thank you for the $2, dude. Thoughts on the draft? Death to the wild card. Hell yes. Death to that stupid wild card. Been one of my biggest pet peeves about wrestling forever. So yeah, wild card is dead, and we're going to talk about that here in just a couple of minutes when we get into the draft and all that stuff. So like I said, we're going in reverse here. The last thing we're going to talk about is Monday Night Raw. The next thing we're going to talk about is SmackDown Live. Big news on SmackDown. I did a mic drop on it later on that night that has like no views on it, like less than 2,000 views, probably because I did it in the middle of the night. But I saw Brock come back, wasn't able to see SmackDown Live. I was working, so I came home and watched it and saw the whole deal and made some initial comments on it. And for those of you who didn't see, SmackDown Live kicked off with Kofi Kingston, who did retain his title at Clash of Champions over Randy Orton. I admittedly predicted that match wrong. I got every match on Clash of Champions right, but for some reason I was way off on this Brock or the Orton and Kofi situation. I thought maybe they were going to go with Randy Orton and take the belt off of Kofi, and Orton can just run with it for a little while. That's kind of what I thought. Brock Lesnar, even though he was on my radar, he had fallen off of my radar as far as winning the title for a couple of reasons. Number one, he won the Money in the Bank briefcase only to cash it in and then lose the belt back. The entire time when he won that Money in the Bank briefcase, I thought that was going to be the vehicle used to get Brock to SmackDown, because this was prior to the wild card rule bullshit. I thought he was going to use that briefcase to get over to SmackDown and challenge Kofi, because he has no reason to screw around with Seth anymore. But then he shows up at Extreme Rules and wins the title from Seth Rollins. Like, what the F? And then they have a title match at SummerSlam and Seth wins the belt back. So my issue was, why'd you even do that? You should have just kept the briefcase on Brock, but maybe they felt with the wild card rule, the briefcase wasn't needed to get him to switch brands. Now you can just do it because of the wild card rule, and that's what we saw. On Tuesday, after Kofi and the New Day were victorious, Heyman and Brock come out. Bearded Brock. Bearded Brock is the best Brock. That's a scary-looking dude. And Heyman gets in the ring and challenges Kofi Kingston to a WWE title match on SmackDown. First SmackDown match for Brock Lesnar in 15 years or something? What's the official time on that? It's got to be 14 or 15 years. And that's going to be on the first show on Fox on October 4th at Staples Center. I will be there. If you're going to be there, shoot me a DM on Twitter. We got some meet and greets set up. Hopefully I'll get to say hello to a few of you if you're going to be in LA for SmackDown. But I might get a chance to see a title change live and in person for the first time since 1999. Last time I saw a WWE title change hands was the night after King of the Ring in 99 when Austin defeated The Undertaker. So this will be cool for me to see in person, to see this title change hands, or will it? What will WWE do here? I have some concerns. Now, I had been speculating that in the last couple of weeks on my podcast that Brock would not be challenging Kofi. That's why I predicted Randy Orton. And the reason I thought that he maybe is not going to be challenging Kofi for the title is because, number one, he already gave up the briefcase, and number two, is his schedule going to change? You know, to me, Brock going to SmackDown was a no-brainer. That I knew was going to happen. But I wasn't really thinking a title was necessary because if Fox is aware of the schedule that Brock usually works, it does not include a lot of TV. So why would they want him champion if he's not going to be there? Why does he even need to be champion if he's not going to be there? He can still be on the show and come in and just work random programs with people, at least at first. So that's what I thought they would just do with Brock. I thought he'd go to SmackDown, be over there with Roman Reigns, and they would have a pretty stacked roster over there. I didn't really have him in my world title radar anymore after he dropped the briefcase because, you know, for everybody that says Fox is calling all the shots, that's another popular opinion I see going around out there. Fox is making every single creative decision for WWE. I have no doubt that on a network this big, Fox has some influence. Fox has some requests. But I don't think they have demands. WWE would not sign away all of creative to a fucking TV network. When that happens, that's when guys like Jim Herd show up in this business and fuck it up. So WWE's not going to do that. And if Fox wants to have certain things on their show, I'm sure they have a right to request those things, but WWE is not at the mercy of Fox. That's ridiculous. If you look at the deal and you look at the numbers and the details of the contract, Fox is not paying really much more than USA Network is. They're just a bigger platform. WWE is heavily promoted. They're on the baseball games. There are commercials all over NFL on Sunday. Wrestlers are making appearances on all sorts of different shows. Fox is really heavily promoting SmackDown. So, of course, WWE is going to want to keep them happy, but the fans are acting like WWE doesn't want big ratings. Only SmackDown does. SmackDown must have demanded Brock Lesnar to be champion. Okay, fine. Let's start over here. Look at what they did. They brought Brock Lesnar back to challenge a champion out of nowhere. How many times have we seen WWE do this? Like a fucking million. What they did on Tuesday was a very WWE thing to do. It's what WWE does. But for some reason, this particular time is all Fox. Fox is given the credit for doing something that WWE already does. And I think that they didn't need Fox to tell them they want Brock Lesnar. WWE should know because we've heard that, right? That's what all the fans have been saying every time they get mad about something. Stupid Vince McMahon, just going right back to Brock Lesnar. Don't you think that's what he's doing again? Don't you think this is more Vince and less Fox? But no, everybody thinks it's Fox. That doesn't make any sense to me. I would expect WWE, if they're going to a new network, no matter where that network is, to bring out a big show, to pull out some big guns. And a network as large as Fox, they don't need Fox to motivate them to get good ratings. They should know that on a network that big, we better please these guys or we're going to get booted off. We want to keep this stage. We want to keep this platform. We need to do whatever we can do to gain as much buzz as possible. And having Brock Lesnar on that show is the perfect way to do that. So to me, with or without Fox's influence, Brock was moving to SmackDown. And what surprised me, I think, was that he's challenging for the title because, like I said, if he's not going to be there, they don't need him to be champion. So what does that mean with Brock? Is he going to maybe work a few more dates? Is Fox, I mean, that's a lot of money. So maybe if WWE said, hey, Brock, can you work like 4 or 5 solid months for us? Or can you put in some solid TV between now and WrestleMania? Maybe 2 SmackDowns a month or something like that. A few more. Maybe that's the case. And if he's on the show every other week, you know, maybe that will help. But I don't know why SmackDown would want the WWE title, the title belt, to not be on their show. That's why I thought it was strange that Brock came out and challenged for the title, because unless he's going to, have a bigger schedule, like I said, or work more dates, I don't see how that's going to help the ratings on Fox. Unless they want to build it for a quick title change, unless it's just going to be temporary to have Brock as the champion to kick off their new show and be champion for a little while, but maybe drop it sooner than people are expecting. Because the number one thing that everybody was assuming when Brock challenged Kofi, oh shit, Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, WrestleMania 36. I've been wrong twice in the last couple of weeks about telling fans not to be too cynical. I was wrong about Baron Corbin, and I was wrong about Brock. So I understand if you don't want to listen to me here, but I'm saying don't be too cynical on that idea either, because it goes back to what I was saying. Is SmackDown or is Fox going to be okay with Brock Lesnar never being on TV for the next 7 months until WrestleMania? If he holds the title until WrestleMania, that's a long time. That's a lot of weeks on SmackDown on Fox without a world title there, without a championship to be chased, without a championship to be defended, without a champion to be on TV. It's going to be a lot of weeks without him, and WrestleMania is far away. So for me, if it was, because WWE already hot potatoed the belt with Brock in the summertime, maybe they do it again here. Maybe he takes the belt from Kofi just to make a big splash, and then maybe he drops it quicker than we think. Maybe he drops it before the end of the year. I don't know if it'll be against Roman Reigns or not, but you got the draft coming up. Who knows who they could put there on SmackDown, and who knows what kind of a match you could do. We know one match he's going to have. He's going to face the Universal Champion at Survivor Series, most likely, which might be Bray Wyatt. Could you imagine that? I had speculated on The Fiend and Randy Orton in that champion versus champion match at Survivor Series. Given their history, I thought that might be fun. Brock and The Fiend might be better, but how the hell do you book that match if you do it? Do you beat Brock again? He's been Seth's bitch all year. You going to put him down again? Would that damage him? I think it wouldn't, but WWE might think it would. But you don't want to beat The Fiend either. And who's the gentleman that gave me the finish earlier? Michael, with the Super Chat finish there. Do that match at Survivor Series. Have Brock Lesnar pick up The Fiend in F5. Hit him with the F5, but as Bray is coming down, he sinks in that mandible claw and puts Brock down and beats him. Why not? Brock has won the past 2 Survivor Series champion versus champion match. Beat quality opponents in great matches in AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan. Maybe it's time for Brock to give one back. Can Brock survive 3 clean losses in a year? Sure. He ended the fucking streak. He's the most recognizable pro wrestler there is right now. And he's going to be SmackDown's, centerpiece of that show on Fox. So I think he could survive it. And I wouldn't mind seeing it. So Brock winning the title, now you just have to wonder, is WWE going to have their first show on Fox be that predictable? Are we going to get some interference? Are they going to do a swerve and have Kofi Kingston beat this guy? Brock, what was it, the Japan show a few years ago when it was Brock and Kofi? Remember that match on the network? I think it's extremely likely. I think we're looking at about a 98.7% chance that Brock wins this title from Kofi. But if WWE wanted to do something crazy, and really, think about what that would do for Kofi. Because regardless of what happens to Kofi here, win, lose, or draw, I'm going to thank him for his run. I appreciate his hard work, and I'm happy for him. And he had a good run, a lot longer than we expected. So if he drops it to Brock here, fine. But if WWE wanted to go crazy and do something real nuts and have Kofi trouble in paradise, the beast, and beat him, I cannot see that happening. But what if they did? I don't know. But that's the big news coming out of SmackDown Live, and should be interesting on October 4th. The Kevin Owens, Shane McMahon situation continued on SmackDown. This is getting a little bit ridiculous. Last week, of course, Kevin Owens was a special referee, but Shane McMahon tapped out anyway, and he got pissed and then fired Kevin Owens. On SmackDown, Kevin Owens serves Shane McMahon with a wrongful termination lawsuit. $25 million, Shane says. He's got the manila envelope in the ring. He calls Kevin Owens in the ring. So Kevin Owens is fired, but he's allowed to enter the building and enter the ring, and that's ridiculous. And Owens, I've never been a fan of this groveling at Shane's feet. He seemed very upset when he was fined, the money, which I appreciate a wrestler putting over a kayfabe fine, because when we hear a fine on TV, we're like, oh, who gives a shit? At least Kevin Owens is acting like this is a big deal. Let me take a sip of water. Constantly talking about his family and how it can damage his family and hurt his family. So now he's trying to turn the tables on Shane McMahon, serves him with the lawsuit, and says that beating Shane up is pointless. He goes, I could just kick your ass right here, but that's not going to do anything. What I need to do is go after your wallet and your pride. So he's now suing Shane McMahon. Shane tweets out, actually, right after this, that he's allowing, while he contemplates his next move, he's going to allow Kevin Owens to work the house show loop that's traveling over to the Philippines, which I think they were there today, and China, and then back in Hawaii, I think, on their way back to the States here. So Owens is allowed to work those shows. Now, this reminds me a lot of, because I was on the house show loop in 1998 after Austin was fired at Judgment Day. As a matter of fact, right after that, excuse me, I had front row seats in Charlotte like 3 days after Austin was fired. I sat right next to John Boy and Billy in North Carolina. And it was right after the pay-per-view. Vince fires Austin, but he's, they're not going to take him off the road because they're selling tickets based on that guy being there. So they had to come up with this like reason for Austin to be allowed on the house shows. And they acknowledged it on TV. Even though house shows aren't talked about and they're virtually invisible, WWE did realize how crazy that was, and they made up an excuse like, he still had contractually obligated dates. After he was fired, he still was booked for these dates, so he has to fulfill them. Like, that's silly. Who would go and work after they're fired or whatever? So I guess what happens sometimes in sports, sometimes a coach knows he's going to be fired, but he goes out and coaches the last game. So they did that with Austin 21 years ago, so I'm not going to be pissed about the ridiculousness of this here. Some people were complaining that him being on the house show loop making no sense. I argue that him being in the ring with Shane McMahon made no sense. So to me, it's wrestling, so suspend your disbelief. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Where is this whole thing going to lead? Kevin Owens tweeted out last week that that cryptic numeric tweet that was supposed to be a hint at him showing up at NXT. He did not this past Wednesday. I suppose he could still go there. I'm thinking that he's going to have one more match with Shane McMahon. I thought they could put this together for Hell in the Cell. Maybe they still can this coming week on TV. I don't think you can do it in the Cell because they've already worked in the Cell, haven't they? So maybe this is another match. You got to think that Shane's career or something has got to be on the line here. And maybe that's what Owens gets in the end. He works hard on this to really sucker Shane into a match. I hope it's just not a match where he says, if I win, I get my job back. That's stupid. It's got to be something better than that. It's got to be not only if I win, do I get my job back, but you are gone from this company and out of our lives forever. So we'll see which way that goes, but I'm assuming that's going to be Hell in the Cell. Otherwise, they might have to, well, hell, they're not going to do anything in Saudi Arabia. I don't think Owens will be on that show. And I can't see this stretching out till Survivor Series. That's going to make all of us nuts. So, yeah. I would think that they're going to put something together real quickly here for Hell in the Cell between the two. Let's talk about Baron Corbin, another guy that I was horribly wrong about. I kind of thought that, even though it's not in WWE's nature, to push baby faces and make baby faces like that, I still was picking Gable to win the tournament because he had an impressive kind of string of victories. Leading up to it, he had a great semifinal 2-fall match with Shane McMahon, got into the finals. They're about to do a brand split again in another draft where you need as much established, credible talent as possible. Making a quick guy here that's been floundering with a King of the Ring title might be a good idea. Although I've fully admitted that heels make the best King of the Rings, especially with that ridiculous crown and that ridiculous cape and that scepter and the promos they could cut. Right from the start, when this bracket was announced, Baron Corbin, promo-wise and everything, would be the best guy to win this thing based on how much of a colossal douchebag he can be. But I just wasn't convinced because he was already kind of given title opportunities with Seth, and you can clearly see that WWE values him and is going to use him in prominent roles forever. Doesn't need the King of the Ring to do that. The King of the Ring is just a little cherry on top of what already is a beautiful douchebag Sunday. So I didn't think that Corbin really needed it. And I think he can get title shots without it. And meanwhile, here Gable is getting some traction, and I maybe like a version of Johnny Gargano, since Gargano is probably sticking around in NXT. This guy's an Olympian. He can be like a new Kurt Angle type, and he didn't win. But he looked strong as shit in the loss. It was a great match on Monday Night Raw. So when we talk about Monday Night Raw here in a minute, I will not talk about the King of the Ring match. The match between the two was great. All of Corbin's matches were really good. I've completely turned the corner on Corbin. He's easy to hate. He's a bald bastard. He annoys all of us, but he's a great shit talker, and he's good in the ring. He's safe in the ring. Have you ever seen him break anybody's neck on that deep six, or anything like that? He botches so little, not only in the ring, but also on the mic. Did you ever notice that? I sit here and do these podcasts. I'm stumbling around like a fucking moron. Baron Corbin is out there on the mic just fluently speaking like there's no issues at all. He's comfortable. He's happy. He likes being a prick. He has that smirk on his face, and he trashes the audience, and he tweets asshole-ish shit all the time. He's just a really good heel, and he's comfortable in that role, and I cannot see him as anything more than a heel. Maybe kind of like The Miz was for so many years. I mean, how could you imagine Miz as a babyface? It's hard imagining him that now. But he was always such a great heel, such a great shit talker. I see a lot of that in Baron Corbin. Even though I didn't predict him to win the King of the Ring, I'm happy that he did. And his coronation and his promo on SmackDown was great. He puts the shit on. And we noticed on Monday, because I was up here live streaming when he won the King of the Ring, I'm like, why is he going to the back? This guy gets in the throne and talks and cuts a promo with a crown on his head every week leading up to the King of the Ring final. Now he wins it and walks right past it. And I guess the reason for that is they wanted to push the coronation for the next night on SmackDown. So he's out there cutting a promo. He's got the crown on. He's got the cape. He looks like an idiot. And Chad Gable comes out and goes full Lawler, 1993, on Baron Corbin. Shows up. Corbin's talking shit on the mic, and he tackles him, spears him through the throne. The throne crumbles into pieces, and he just tattoos Corbin with the scepter, crushes the crown. Corbin runs away all mad, my crown, my cape, and that's good stuff. So now you might do a rematch, and maybe now Gable can get a victory there, and who knows, with the draft coming up, where he lands, and there's still that speculation of that Shorty G trademark. I thought maybe Gable, after this, could go heel, because Gable's a pretty okay heel. I liked him with the shush and all that. So if maybe he's like throws his hands up in frustration, yeah, I had the chance to win the King of the Ring, I'm just not cutting it as a babyface. Maybe I have to do something drastic, change up my character, change up my look, change up my attitude. And maybe he comes out like a John Cena type, like a rapper type with a sideways hat and a chain. And he's like, I'm Shorty G. And he just turns into a heel. I hope not. But if he does, it might be, I don't know, interesting to watch, to say the least. We also had Daniel Bryan and Eric Rowan having a promo. Now, earlier on SmackDown, Rowan had a backstage interview with Michael Cole, which wasn't horrible. Actually, was pretty good. I liked that the first names are back all of a sudden. So now he's Eric Rowan again. And of course, we saw Luke Harper show up at Clash of Champions helping Rowan beat Roman. We had speculated on Harper coming back at some point, and Harper has got his first name back as well. So you've got Luke Harper and Eric Rowan. The Bludgeon Brother gimmick seems to be completely no more. Now they're just going by their real names again. WWE needs to make up their minds on this shit. And Harper and Bryan are in the ring. Daniel Bryan's yelling at Eric Rowan, I trusted you. You were my friend. I still consider you a friend. Luke Harper shows up from behind, nails Daniel Bryan. The two of them start beating the crap out of him. Roman Reigns comes out to make the save, only to get the tables turned on him as well. Bryan and Roman get beat up badly, and Bryan takes a nasty table bump. And it just makes me so worried with his head and his concussions if he needs to be taking gnarly bumps like that. But hopefully all is well there. And I guess we might get a tag match now. And I'm still questioning Daniel Bryan's involvement here. This feels like, I don't know. Shout out to Brian Zane, who just did a video on Aces and Eights the other day. And, we remember the ending of that and the climax of that angle when Bully Ray turned out to be the leader of Aces and Eights. And you're like, this makes no damn sense. He's been feuding with him all this time. So the more and more Daniel Bryan gets physical with Eric Rowan and Luke Harper, the harder it's going to be to believe that he was the mastermind behind this the whole time. But maybe he still can be, because it feels like now they might be setting up a tag. Maybe next week on SmackDown. I don't even know if WWE's announced this. They may have. But it feels like, wouldn't we get a tag with Roman and Bryan against Rowan and Harper? Correct? We might get that at Hell in a Cell. We might get it as early as this week on SmackDown. And if that happens and it's a pay-per-view match or something like that, or it's a main event of a SmackDown where it's the focal point of the show, or, maybe they do this on October 4th and save this tag match for then, and you do the big swerve on October 4th, revealing that Daniel Bryan and Harper and Rowan were in on this all along, and they beat down Roman Reigns. Still not sure what the motivation is if Daniel Bryan turns out to be the mastermind, and I don't know why he wasted so much time, distracting us, making us think that he wasn't, only to reveal that he is, when he should have just revealed that he was the whole time. Don't know where Samoa Joe's going to lie in all this. He might come out there and maybe help Rowan if Daniel Bryan turns on Roman and winds up joining up with Rowan and Harper. Then maybe you have Samoa Joe coming to back up Roman Reigns at some point and becoming a babyface. The draft still has a lot to do with this. They might split up Roman and Daniel. They might split up Daniel and Harper and Rowan. Harper and Rowan, I'm hoping they keep together, but Daniel Bryan might be headed back over to Raw, and Roman might stay on SmackDown. So who knows where everybody's going to fall in the draft. But we've got Hell in a Cell coming up first, and maybe they'll put something together for that and end that issue. The only other things I have written down for SmackDown that's worth mentioning is that it looks like they're setting up for an Ali versus Nakamura IC title match, probably at Hell in a Cell. They were supposed to have a match on SmackDown. Sami Zayn was out there with a neck brace. selling, what was it, the Undertaker choke slam, even trying to dance, but he couldn't dance because his neck hurt so much. Sammy is amazing. Not sure how much I like him in this role, but he never ceases to entertain me. And I don't think the match ever got started. Nakamura and Sami Zayn beat the crap out of Ali. They'll probably set up an IC title match for Ali at the Hell in the Cell, and that would be cool. That's a great match on paper. Nakamura and Ali seems like he's had a lot of start and stop. Maybe this is opportunity. Maybe this is his opportunity to get belt around his waist. Or maybe they save it and do it when SmackDown moves to Fox and they do it on a big show there. And this drags out beyond that. But if they set the match up, I think whether it happens at Hell in the Cell or on SmackDown or both, and you do rematches, whatever the end result is, I think maybe Ali should take the Intercontinental title here. He's had a couple of opportunities that have been pulled away from him, like the King of the Ring and the initial push there in the Elimination Chamber, and would be nice to see this guy thrown a bone. So I'm kind of hoping he beats Nakamura. And the only other thing I'll mention about SmackDown is Charlotte Flair taking on Sasha Banks one-on-one. This match ended in a DQ. I think Charlotte won via DQ when she was about to put the figure 4 or figure 8 on Sasha. Bayley interfered. They start beating the crap out of Charlotte. Carmella, of all people, show up and makes the save. And the two of them run off, Bayley and Sasha. What was interesting is they cut backstage at one point to see Ric Flair is there. So this is very comforting to know, because Ric Flair, I feel, is stupid and had no business with this the man trademark stuff, and he does not have a leg to stand on. And I feel like if this eventually gets into the court system, he'll be laughed right out of the courtroom. So to see him there is a good sign. I'm hoping that WWE just called him in a room and be like, Rick, what can we do here? You know, don't embarrass yourself anymore. If you want some money, let's just work something out. You want 50 grand? Well, 50 grand shut you up, because if you go through with this, you're going to lose, kind of thing. So I'm hoping that with Ric Flair being there, there was a backstage meeting with him and management, and whatever's going on there with the trademark, that issue has been resolved. Because if it hasn't, why are they having him on TV? And I do believe he is scheduled for October 4th on SmackDown. I think he's supposed to be there, at least advertised for the show. He's going to be the guest of honor on the Jericho Cruise that I'll be going on in January as well. So hopefully whatever issues there were between Ric Flair and WWE, they've been worked out. Another thing you have to think about is Ric Flair's Legends deal. I did hear somewhere that maybe that is coming up soon, and Ric Flair has a history of jumping over to other places if they're going to throw some money at him, and this fucker seems broke as hell. So it is possible, WWE, I think fans overuse the word scared and desperate too much, but there is a possibility that they might actually be scared that Ric Flair will not re-sign his Legends deal and allow AEW to throw a bunch of money at him, because all it takes with Ric Flair is money. That's all it takes. And if AEW is willing to pay him just to get him away from WWE, that's what the war is about. You can start getting guys doing dirty tricks, and they can bring Ric Flair into All Elite Wrestling to have a damn Four Horsemen reunion. You got Arn there, you got Tully there, you got Malenko there. There you go. You can easily do a version of the Four Horsemen, in AEW. So maybe WWE's a little bit worried about that, and they want to get Ric Flair back in the good graces of the company. Look, Rick, we love you. You're the Babe Ruth. You're a statue guy. Don't go over there. Kind of reminds me of, I remember when I was young, Andre the Giant, his last appearance, I think, on TV was for WCW. And I remember being kind of like upset about that. That was the last time that we as wrestling fans got to see him on TV in any form, on any wrestling show, was in WCW, when he made his name. He made his name all over the world, but primarily there at the end of his career, he was a WWE guy. He was there for the last several years of his career, and that's, WWE's godfather figure. That's their one big epic, figure that can never be touched or topped. And it always kind of bugged me personally as a big WWE fan back then that his last appearance was for WCW. So I would really hate for Ric Flair in his old age and everything going on with him, for him to be pissed and have a falling out with Triple H and WWE and head on over to All Elite Wrestling and work there for a few years. And then, something happens to him or whatever, and he's never able to come back and mend fences with the WWE and be there with his daughter, who is there, who, according to the fans, only gets her push because of her dad. Well, what happens if her dad goes to All Elite Wrestling? What becomes of her push then? If she continues to win titles, what's your excuse? I'd legitimately like to know. But anyway, and I have no idea who is Offset, by the way. Offset, sorry, I'm an old man. I don't keep track of music. I have no idea who Offset is, but Offset did introduce Charlotte Flair in her match with Sasha Banks. And yeah, so that's that as far as SmackDown Live goes. We're going to move over to Raw. Let me peek back over here to the chat. I am still up and running, right? True, Thomas. True that. I forgot about that. Ric Flair was originally advertised to present the AEW title in person. It turned out to be Bret Hart instead. That's right. So, yeah, and you remember what Ric Flair did when WWE retired him and he headed over to Impact. So he has a history of this. And so the fact that he was backstage on SmackDown and it sounds like he will be appearing for WWE again makes me hopeful that something has been worked out between the two sides. Let's talk about Raw. Now, luckily, Raw is going to be pretty quick because we talked about SmackDown and a lot of, like the Corbin coronation. We already talked about the match and all of that. So we're primarily here just going to talk about a couple of things, including some of the returns that we saw on Monday Night Raw and Seth Rollins and Bray Wyatt. Now, Seth Rollins opened up Monday Night Raw, big victory promo. He beat Braun Strowman with 4 curb stomps, more than Brock took at Clash of Champions. So Braun did go down. Seth did defeat him clean, but Braun went down fighting. Braun is back to being the angry monster again. He wants to kick the hell out of everybody. Showed up during a promo between the two sets of tag team champions, the Revival, Rude, and Ziggler, came out and attacked everyone. So Braun is back doing that. Sounds like they're probably going to have him do that for a couple of weeks until they figure out who he's going to feud with next. And I don't know what the future holds for Braun, but it doesn't look like in the end it's really going to hurt him that much. But he is like 0-6 in world title matches, but I wasn't expecting him to win here. This is a match I wouldn't have given to Strowman anyway. It's like the same thing when did he wrestle Brock last year? What match was him and Brock at Clash of Champions or Night of Champions? Whenever that was. It was like the same thing. I'm like, why give Strowman the match if you're not going to put him over? Save this, man. Save this epic confrontation for the future. Don't just put him in there in the ring with Brock and then have Brock beat him. That's no fun. So now, same thing with Seth. I'm like, shit, now you're beating Strowman again. But at the same time, I didn't think Seth should be dropping the belt. He just won it back at SummerSlam. Why is he going to drop it the next month after dropping it the month before that? So it's way too much hot potato going on. So I expected Seth to win, but beating Strowman in the process, whatever, just puts over Seth more strongly, and it appears that all of that Roman Reigns push has been transferred over to Seth Rollins, and he's their new guy. But he was interrupted by a Firefly Funhouse segment. So we get Mr. Rogers, Bray Wyatt on the screen, talks some wacky shit to Seth Rollins, and implies that Seth could see him later tonight. Kind of has that dark look on his face, and that's it. So he basically said, I'll be out there tonight, and you're going to see me again. Seth Rollins would face Bobby Roode, of all people, in the main event. And we knew that if they're going to have Seth and Roode in the main event, we've got to see The Fiend. That was almost a guarantee. So, I don't even remember. I love how my notes are so half-assed here. Did Seth beat Roode, or did it go to a DQ? Anyway, Ziggler and the OC. So Gallows and Anderson, AJ Styles, and Dolph Ziggler all showed up. All 5 guys are attacking Seth Rollins. Kane comes out. Now, Kane was on the show because Raw was in Tennessee. So they did a 24/7 pre-tape at the University of Tennessee's football stadium with Mayor Glenn Jacobs and R-Truth. And Glenn had a referee in disguise, takes off the whatever the hell he had on to reveal, I think it was a cop or a security guard, to reveal that he's a referee. He rolls up R-Truth and wins the 24/7 title. And Mayor Glenn Jacobs is a champion in WWE. Then Glenn drives to Raw in a limousine. R-Truth hangs onto the top of the limousine the whole time, all the way down the interstate. And they show back up in the garage. Kane gets out, or Glenn Jacobs gets out. R-Truth jumps off the top of the limo, rolls him up, and wins back the 24/7 title. So Glenn was busy. He would come out here in the main event, dressed as Kane, to make the save, choke slams everybody, kicks everyone's ass, and as promised and as we pretty much knew, the lights go out, and in a really great visual, the Fiend turns up behind over-the-shoulder Kane. And this would have been so great if they would have done this with Austin or Taker last week. I cannot believe they did not have him attack one of these legends. Did Austin or Taker not want to do it, or what the hell was the reasoning there? That would have been so great. But the Kane stuff was pretty good too. He turns around, he eats a mandible claw, and the whole time Seth has been laying there suffering the beatdown that he suffered from all 5 guys. And so after the Fiend puts down Kane, he crawls over to Seth Rollins, who's got like one head on the bottom turnbuckle. And in another really great visual that I included in the thumbnail here, Bray Wyatt in that mask just kind of looking over Seth Rollins with the lights completely out. Great shit. The show goes off the air. So I am really excited for that match at Hell in the Cell. Not only is that match at Hell in the Cell, it's in Hell in the Cell, which is great. You know, I kind of think these Cell matches should be saved for big feuds. I think Owens and Shane have much more to do in the Cell. I think even Orton and Kofi would if you wanted to stretch that out, even though they're not. I think there's a lot of other matches that could go in the Cell before these two guys, but whatever. It matches Bray's character. And now, with him taking on Seth Rollins inside the Cell, I don't see any other way to book this match other than The Fiend winning. And I'm usually not a too much too soon type of guy. You guys know that. I'm in no rush for people to win titles. I'm a very big believer, and it's a marathon, not a sprint. And just hold your horses, and the wrestling fans are so damn impatient all the time. But this is a situation where they got every right to be impatient. If they're going to give him a title match, have him win it. Otherwise, don't give him the fucking title match. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to beat Bray Wyatt right now. At the earliest, this guy needs to lose a match. I mean, the absolute bare minimum earliest would be like early next year. But I'd like to be pushed to WrestleMania or beyond. That's what would be best for me for The Fiend, just given the nature of this character. He goes out there and gets curb stomped and pinned. What the hell, or where do you go from here? And I'm also a big believer in is if you lose to the champion, that doesn't mean you're buried. I think the fans are way too fast to toss out that word. But in this instance, I think it would truly harm the character of The Fiend to just have him lose right here. You got to save it. Not that Seth isn't capable of beating The Fiend. Not at all. It's not that. It's just that I don't want to see him suffer a loss and be humanized this quickly. So if you're putting him in a title match and he's got a Cell, which adds all sorts of different dimensions to this, he can pull some mind games. He can do some tricks. Maybe they got some trick planned out where the lights go out and they come back on and he's on the outside of the Cell. And then the lights go out and he's back on the inside of the Cell. Maybe they do a double doink situation because, you know, he's pretty concealed in that getup that he wears. If you find a guy that looks a little bit like him, you know, and you put that costume on him, you could do like a double Fiend type of thing to really freak Seth Rollins out. I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like that, to where in the middle of the match, the lights go out, something happens to confuse Seth, they come back on, he doesn't know where he is, and bam, he eats the mandible claw, and he goes down. Something like that to where it keeps Seth strong, to where he can say, yeah, I lost the match, but come on. I was in a goddamn horror movie, you know, so it's not your typical match. So you can keep him strong, and then you can even maybe split him up on the draft. You can send Seth to SmackDown if you want him there with Brock. Maybe you don't. I'd actually keep Seth on Raw. So if you do that, that makes The Fiend now the champion, which would be really interesting to see him with the belt. And it would set Raw apart from SmackDown, who's probably going to have a big, credible professional wrestler in Brock Lesnar win their title over there. If you have Raw kind of being the wacky show, you know, and then NXT being what it is, you might actually have a chance here to have three distinct personalities on TV shows, you know, that have different feels and different vibes to them and different storylines. That is a possibility if you have somebody as crazy as Bray Wyatt as champ on one show and Brock Lesnar as champ on another show. And it makes that Survivor Series match very interesting if that is still the plan. I suppose WWE could do away with the champion versus champion thing this year if they wanted to. But if it stays that way, you might have The Fiend versus Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series, and then in that match, it's the same thing with the Seth match. I don't want to beat The Fiend yet. I don't want to see Brock Lesnar go into one of these matches and have a hard-fought match and then win, like he did against AJ and against Daniel Bryan. If he goes in there against The Fiend, I think he needs to lose to The Fiend. But will WWE beat Brock in 3 big pay-per-views this year? I say no. So that makes me wonder if this match even happens. So if it doesn't happen, that means one of these two guys is not winning their title. Either Fiend is not winning the Universal or Brock is not winning the World. But which one is it? So the next couple of months are going to be interesting. To me, isn't that fun? Like, isn't that cool? Like when we don't know what the hell is going to happen. You know, I don't know what the hell they're going to do here. So the whole situation at Hell in the Cell is interesting. But like I said, I am strongly rooting for The Fiend. I think, you know, if you're going to do this match, you got to have him win. Otherwise, hold it off. Do it next year. You know, if you're not going to have The Fiend win the title, I'd put opponents in front of The Fiend. I'd put I'd put Finn Balor in front of him again as the Demon and have The Fiend beat the Demon on his way. Then do something crazy at Survivor Series. Then win another match. And then maybe challenge at the Royal Rumble or something like that and then win the title. But since they're doing it now, makes me think that they're going to make him champion now. And okay, I'm ready for it. It should be interesting. And if he does win, everybody's a fan of the Fiend character. I don't see any smarky people being like, oh, that character's lame. If you are, you're just mad or something. Everybody thinks the Bray Wyatt character's pretty cool. And if he is champion, he will definitely make an interesting world title holder on that brand. And I don't know if he'll wind up feuding or facing Strowman one day. I would like to see Strowman. I'd like to see them try one more time with Strowman. A lot of people are like, oh, it's going to be Roman and Brock at WrestleMania. Well, maybe they send Strowman to SmackDown and he finally is able to beat Brock over there. That could make up for everything with Strowman. I don't know. The draft is going to be very telling as far as what we see there. And we're going to talk more about that draft in a minute. Where is my Raw notes? Lost them. Lost my Raw notes. Oh, yeah, that's right. We got to talk about this. So one of the crazier parts of... Oh, I'm just reading a little bit of the chat here. One of the craziest parts of Monday Night Raw was Maria Kanellis doing a gender reveal party. Yes, Monday Night Raw has a gender reveal party. I hate those. It's backstage. They got these balloons and shit set up. Bunch of wrestlers are in there for some reason. And then Maria, we haven't seen her and Mike in a couple of weeks, and at least on Raw. And she continues to shit on Mike and then announces in front of everybody that he's not the father of her baby, which we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for her to say this. I can't believe I'm talking about this like it's a soap opera. Fucking Young and the Restless. You're not the father. It's, drumroll please, Ricochet. Ricochet, who just seems to be standing there. I don't even think he's drinking because he's a weirdo. And they're like, okay, so then Mike's mad. What? Ricochet doesn't bother to question his wife at all. The woman that's been treating him like shit, literally crapping on his head every day in front of everybody. It doesn't even once occur to him that maybe she's full of shit. Maybe she's lying about this. Nope, he's just mad. He wants to face Ricochet right away in the ring. So fine. They go out and have the match. Ricochet beats him. And then Maria comes out to the ramp with the mic and says, this was just a test to get you mad to see if you were capable of fighting for my honor. Of course, Ricochet wasn't the father. But you know who is? And then Rusev's music plays. Rusev is back with a much more leaner look. He's shaved and he's got a porn stash. He's ready to rock and roll. And he gets in the ring, and he has a match with Mike Kanellis as well, and beats him with the accolade, I believe. And Rusev is back. But what a random-ass place to bring him back. And is he just one of the many people that Maria is going to claim as the baby's father? How does Lana feel about this? And if you notice, when Maria announced him, she didn't announce him. His music hit before she said his name. And she kind of made a face. So I don't know if that was intentional. And Rusev has nothing to do with the situation, and he was just coming out there. And he'll explain that in later weeks when he's like, what are you talking about? I'm not the father. She never said I was the father. I just came out there. So that might be how they get out of that. Or was it just a botch? Because they did a botch in the beginning of the show. If you saw those upside down graphics, at least we thought it was a botch. Maybe it was Bray Wyatt related, because years ago when Undertaker and Kane would be doing funny stuff, they would have some graphical issues, some static and things happening throughout the show. Oh, what's going on? We're having some technical difficulties, fans. We apologize for this, and it just turned out to be the Undertaker. So I don't know if the upside down shit was Bray Wyatt screwing with the truck or what, but pretty funny stuff. And Rusev coming out there now, while it was crazy and weird, I'm hoping it was just a way to reintroduce him to people. And that's what I said before. Expect to see some of these people that have been on the shelf maybe reappearing between now and the draft. Some people that we haven't seen very much of, like Rusev and others, just so they're there and they can be drafted when that time comes. Other than that, the only other thing I have written down is the OC defeated Cedric and the War Raiders in a 6-man when AJ pinned Cedric again. So AJ beat Cedric pretty decisively or definitively on the kickoff show at Clash of Champions, and then beat him again here with a phenomenal forearm. There were some rumors. I don't know if it was Meltzer said something or somebody said something about Vince McMahon wanting to bury Cedric. Shut up. That's fucking ridiculous. I don't know why Cedric lost 2 nights in a row, but I wouldn't, considering losing to the best wrestler in the world, a burial. Cedric, I would like to see win the U.S. title, and I think he still will. I think there's a chance for him. So I'm not going to automatically just throw my hands up and say, oh, Cedric's buried because Meltzer said so. No, not at all. I think he still has a chance, and I'm not too concerned with him dropping those 2 matches to AJ Styles. But as far as the draft goes, there's been lots of speculation on that too. With Raw and SmackDown, where people are going to land. I don't even have the time or energy to put together a mock draft. There's so much talent there. It's got to be so hard to try to organize that and decide where the best person or where the best place is for every single person is. because you just don't know. And you might do the entire draft. This is the problem with the draft in recent years and previous years, is that once they do it, they realize, oh shit, we should have put this guy over here. And then they just start coming up with weird ways to get the talent all mixed in together again. So I think there should be a little bit more black and white rules here, and none of this, flimsy rule like the wild card. If you do a draft, but you also want to leave yourself open to maybe change some stuff around if you have second thoughts, in the future, or if AEW is breathing down your neck and you want to spice up one of the shows and put together a dream match or something, I think maybe you can do things here and there to make that possible, but don't make it overcommon. Don't do it all the time to where it doesn't feel special. And maybe they can implement something to where you have like trades. Maybe each brand gets, 3 to 5 trades per year. Maybe you have a trade deadline, at the end of the year prior to WrestleMania, or maybe it's 9 months. Maybe trades can begin after WrestleMania all the way through the end of the year, something like that. And then once you get to the Royal Rumble, no more trades. I don't know. Something like that might make it a little bit easier if WWE says, oh, let's move this person over here. It'll be better for them. It'll be better for the storyline or whatever. They have a reason to do that. Otherwise, they're going to paint themselves in a corner here and having these brands be exclusive, and then if they do decide, because it's so lame in the past when they would do this, oh, general manager so-and-so is allowing this person to show up on Raw tonight. That happened way too often. So I'd like to see that a lot less and to have a little bit more official moves. If somebody's going to go to another brand, they're not invading, they're not buying a ticket and sitting in the front row and jumping the barricade, all the shit that we've seen so many times before that doesn't feel real because it isn't real. So if they do something a little bit more, maybe like sports related with trades, that might make it feel a little bit more credible. But like I said, I have my doubts on this draft because so far they've never been able to pull this off, ever. Not even for a short amount of time. It's just, and what does that mean for the pay-per-views too? Are they going to go back to brand exclusive pay-per-views? Or are they going to be mixed together? I think they're still going to be mixed together, but that's going to make it even harder to have two separate brands or two different brands with different identities if they're all on the same pay-per-view anyway. So like I said, I've got my doubts on this, but where are people going to land? Like I said, you got all the people that are on the shelf right now, the Rusevs, AOP, Luke Harper, Sheamus, Jinder Mahal, John Cena is another one, maybe Ronda Rousey, The Undertaker. Some guys, I don't want John Cena to come back and just say, I can be on whatever show I want. I think at some point he should be drafted to one show. He doesn't have to happen on the draft night because he's off doing whatever he's doing. Whenever he's ready to come back, I think he should land on a specific brand, or he could be like a free agent and the two sides can vie for him or compete for him. And what does Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman do? Are they going to be more on TV for that or for this? Who is going to be making these picks? One thing I hope they don't do is the stupid Titantron graphic thing where they just shuffle the names and then a picture comes up and they say, this person's on this draft now or on this brand now. That's so lazy. That's just like phoning it in. They cannot phone in this draft. I'd be willing to have them, come out on podiums like they did before. Didn't Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman head up a draft before back in the day? So I would love to see them on there unless WWE wants to keep their executive directors of TV roles backstage and backstage only. But if they do, announce some GMs again, the GMs can do it, and maybe it will be Heyman and Bischoff. Or maybe they'll come out to do the draft, but announce to the fans that they're not going to have that much presence on the show. Just they'll be out there sometimes when needed. But Heyman is also the advocate for Brock Lesnar, so how's that going to work? And if Heyman is the lead writer of Raw, but Lesnar is on SmackDown, what the fuck are they doing there? So I don't even know if Heyman and Bischoff need to be involved in this on TV because it wouldn't make any sense for Heyman to be heading up the Raw draft when his guy is challenging for the SmackDown title, So I don't think that would even work. And if it did, how would it work? And also NXT, you might see some call-ups and you might see some people moving the other way. With Velveteen Dream dropping the North American title, I think he could be a very likely candidate to come up now. They might want some really outlandish character on Fox. And Velveteen Dream is great. They heavily featured him on that first USA show. And he had a great match and he performed wonderfully. And he sold his ass off and he dropped the belt. And he's a little bit banged up with a lower back issue apparently. So I would love to see Velveteen maybe come up to the roster now. I don't know if he'd stick around there and maybe challenge Adam Cole for the NXT title and he'll win that first before coming up to the main roster, or if they will move him now and move on Adam Cole to somebody like Matt Riddle or whatever. So that could go a lot of ways there. And the commentary team is another thing that we've been hearing a lot about. There's speculation that the announced teams on Monday Night Raw could involve Vic Joseph being the lead commentator with somebody else. Not sure who yet. Michael Cole and Corey Graves have been rumored to go over to SmackDown, which makes sense. They've got the most experience and they got good chemistry. Renee Young will probably be moving on to host that FS1 show. And you got Tom Phillips and Byron Saxton floating around. They have nowhere to land. You got Morrow, Nigel, and Beth in NXT. You got a lot of great announcers on the roster here. So it's just a matter of where the best fits for those people are. And I kind of like the idea of Raw getting a new look, a new voice on Monday Night Raw. And whoever is side by side with Joseph, I don't know if it's that Madden guy or not, but whoever is with him, I think could just be a nice, fun breath of fresh air on Raw. And I'd love to see Vic Joseph get an opportunity. But I'm also concerned about Tom Phillips. I like him. I don't want to see him jobless. I'm hoping maybe he joins a 3-man booth somewhere. Maybe Raw has a 3-man, SmackDown has a 2-man. Cole and Graves might be all you need on SmackDown, and maybe you do a 3-man booth on Raw or vice versa. I don't know. But I'm hoping that this doesn't leave Phillips and Saxton out in the dark. They're both okay enough. I know people aren't the biggest Byron Saxton fans, but I don't want to see the guy let go or have nothing to do. So yeah, all that should be interesting. And I'd love to see where you guys think certain guys should land. Brock is going to be on SmackDown, obviously. He'll probably get drafted there. And what is the deal with these champions? The champions is another thing that I've been harping on. You've got a SmackDown women's champion and a Raw women's champion. They can't be drafted. That would make no damn sense unless when you draft them, you change the name of the titles again. Oh, well, this one's blue now and now this one's red. But you can get out of that by maybe having Becky Lynch drop the women's title to Sasha at Hell in the Cell, and then Becky gets drafted to SmackDown. Sasha remains on Raw. Maybe Charlotte comes back to Raw, with Bayley. You didn't do some shuffling around or whatever. So I think that's very possible. I think Bayley's probably going to keep the SmackDown title, though, so beyond Hell in the Cell, and she'll be champion going into the draft, so you just got to keep her on SmackDown. Whether you have to acknowledge this or not, or maybe you can just not draft her. She won't be one that's drafted to Raw. You just put her on SmackDown. Because we got to remember, this isn't a shakeup. This is an actual draft. So every single roster member is going to have to be picked at some point. So how do you do that? And if you get 2 competing GMs who are going to pick the champion of the other brand just to fuck with the other, that's too confusing. So the tag team champions and the women's champions, they need to figure that out, how they are going to proceed with that. Unless those champions are just by default drafted to that brand. That's probably going to be what they have to do, right? There's no other way to do it. Unless you just pretend that Raw has selected a champion that just happens to be on the Raw brand. I think it's going to have to be something like that. So I think with the possibility of Becky, because Becky's the big star right now in WWE, and Fox might be demanding her, like all the fans are claiming that Fox is demanding everything, apparently. So if they're demanding Becky, she can't come over there as Raw Women's Champion. So dropping the belt to Sasha might be a spoiler for Hell in a Cell. And I'd be fine with that. I'd be totally fine with Sasha being champ again. I like her. That is about it for the Raw, SmackDown, and NXT news and draft news. I want to talk about a little bit of news before we get out of here. And also, I'm going to go over here to the chat and see if I missed anything. Yeah, wow, low audience today. That's all right. Okay, good. I didn't miss any super chats. I feel really bad last time when I missed a few. What else was I going to tell you guys about the channel? Oh yeah, for Hell in the Cell, incidentally. That's right. That's what I wanted to tell you. We're going to do something different for this pay-per-view. I've been reacting to a lot of pay-per-views live. However, I'm going to do it differently for Hell in the Cell. I just want to test and see how my video fares. One thing that I'm missing doing when I do my reactions is coming up here and doing a review of the pay-per-view. And I'm usually, after 3 or 4 hours of streaming, I'm too burnt out to stay up here and do a review of the whole show. And I kind of want to get back to doing that. I didn't even give you guys a review of Clash of the Champions because I was up here reacting to it. So I'm going to continue to react to Raw every single week. But for Hell in the Cell, I'm going to watch it live. I'm going to live tweet, and I'm going to come up live on YouTube immediately following the pay-per-view, and we're going to review it. And we're going to see how that does. We're going to see how that affects the audience, the subscribers, the traffic on the channel, and all of that, and just see how my numbers do compared to the live reactions. And I'm going to compare them, and going forward, I might make a change. But I'll always be up here reacting to Raw. I'll be up here reacting to stuff if I'm home. But maybe the pay-per-views, I'm going to maybe only react to the big ones. Like pay-per-views like the Royal Rumble are really fun to react to. So maybe do the big ones, but maybe the smaller in between pay-per-views, I'll just do a regular review. I think that's what I'm going to try, and I'm going to start that for Hell in the Cell. That way I can give you guys a good, thorough review of the show. We can talk about it and all of that, and I won't be too tired. I want to talk about some wrestling news before we get out of here. First of all, I want to talk about New Japan. New Japan Pro Wrestling released its financial figures, and they had the biggest year in history, grossing over $50 million. That's very good, according to the Observer, and that's very good news despite the future of New Japan Pro Wrestling on American television is very much up in the air right now with Anthem's purchase of Access TV and where New Japan is going to be when their contract with them runs out. You would think that they're probably not going to keep programming on that channel. So I'm hoping that we still get a chance to see a little bit more of them here in the United States. I am a subscriber to New Japan World. It's best $9.99, second best $9.99 I've ever spent a month, and that's great shit. But as far as TV here, who knows where they land in the future, but that's really good news and just a really good illustration of how big wrestling is right now. Raw is going to go through some changes. SmackDown is going through a huge change. NXT and AEW are head-to-head on Monday nights. New Japan is doing record business. Even TNA Impact has been having some good news with Anthem's purchase of Access TV and immediately announcing that Impact would be on there starting after Bound for Glory, I think, later this month or later next month. So literally every wrestling company, maybe with the exception of Ring of Honor, has had some really good news lately. And that's just, there's just a lot of wrestling to go around. So I apologize if I can't keep up with all of it on these podcasts, but I was really happy to hear that news about New Japan. I wanted to shout out Tori Wilson earlier on. I did that. She apparently got married. Congratulations to her. She had an Instagram post about that. I suppose I should probably give up hopes on us now that she is married. I did watch a couple of minutes of The Table for Three. She did one with Carmella and Mandy, kind of interesting. And I mentioned that WWE is in the Philippines right now. They held a show earlier today, I think in Manila, and EC3, who's not dead, apparently briefly won the 24/7 title, but lost right back to R-Truth. I thought that was funny because EC3, I've been wondering about him. We haven't even been seeing him really chasing around that 24/7 title, and I would love for him to go back to NXT. So he's one of the talents among maybe a few others in the draft that I would really like to see maybe go the other direction. We saw Leo Rush head back down there, and EC3 would be another one. Maybe you could get nuts and send Asuka back there. Maybe if Baszler keeps retaining. How cool would that be? Maybe if Baszler just keeps retaining, beats Candice LeRae, the match that I'm hoping she has with Rhea Ripley at TakeOver. Maybe she beats her there and then runs into Asuka or returning Asuka at some point. Oh, man. And then she's met her match. But Asuka, I think, is more than capable and more than worthy of holding a main title on the main roster. She should be beating Charlotte, Becky, Sasha, all of them. So I'm hoping that they split up her and Kairi Sane. They take the Kabuki Warriors and flush it right down the crapper. And you split those ladies up and have them as prominent singles stars on rosters. They can be on the same one or separate them. Doesn't matter. They're both world title contenders. And your roster it's hard enough to support two world titles as it is, and it amazes me that they have two world champion caliber talents on a tag team. It drives me crazy. So the Kabuki Warriors and the Page Alliance and all that, I'm ready for that to be done. Hopefully it is, and let's move on from that abomination and get these gals in contention again. You know, Asuka started off the year great, beat Becky Lynch at the Royal Rumble. What the hell happened? God, WWE's frustrating. The other big news I want to mention, too, is the Big Cass situation. Now, this happened, I think, last Saturday, the day after my last podcast. He was booked for a WrestlePro event, an outfit out of New York. And this was supposed to be a farewell show for Pat Buck, an old journeyman wrestler who just recently got hired by WWE as a producer. It's like his farewell show. You know, his I said retirement. His farewell show is goodbye. A lot of wrestling indie promotions do this. When somebody gets signed to WWE, they give him a nice send-off. And this is what the whole show was centered around. Big Cass is booked for this thing, and apparently he was acting all erratic backstage, threatening Joey Janela, who, if you remember, recently had that altercation with Enzo at the Blink-182 concert, giving him shit. And it was interesting because both guys were reported to be in the same locker room the night before, and there was no issues. So Cass is out of his mind, threatening physical harm on poor little Joey Janela. And then he started going around the locker room apparently and accusing everybody of stealing his sweater. And when I'm reading some sweater that he brought, and when I'm reading this, I don't know why, I shouldn't make light of this, but I'm reminded, have you guys seen the movie This Is the End? You know, with James Franco and all those guys, or It's the End of the World and everything. The scene in the beginning of the movie at the big house party at James Franco's house, Michael Cera, the younger kid from like Superbad, the way he was acting in that movie, and he's all coked out of his mind, and he's slapping chicks on the ass, and then he's accusing people of like stealing his cell phone before he gets impaled and killed. It just kind of reminded me of that. I'm like, I just immediately thought when I'm reading the story and I see the line Cass is accusing people of stealing his sweater, I just imagine him in the locker room being like, "Hey man, which one of you motherfuckers stole my sweater?" It just immediately reminded me of that. I don't know why. But if you've never seen that movie, check out that scene. It's pretty fucking funny. And that's what I would imagine Cass was acting like backstage. He would then run in to Pat Buck, going over his match with SCU and getting in his face. And I think he spit in his face or something like that. And Pat just decked him with a right hand, dropped his ass. And apparently as soon as Cass hit the floor, he kind of like came to, almost like confused why he got hit. So he was clearly out of his mind on pills, booze, both, or worse. Cops were called. He was taken away in an ambulance. I think he was even saying things that were a little wacky. I had thought this guy had gotten his shit together. He was working with DDP. He had some alcohol issues. We know that. He had like a seizure a few months back that was kind of scary. And he kind of seemed like he was back on the comeback trail. He was even in amazing physical shape. You got to understand, this guy's 7 feet tall. This guy is, you know, any lack of success he has in the wrestling business is going to be his fault and his fault alone, because that is not a guy that you underutilize. That's another guy. That's not a guy that takes hip tosses in dark matches. That's your main event. And anything that he, you know, any bumps along the way, you know, is his fault. He has nobody but himself to blame. He cannot get his shit together. And to somebody like Joey Janela's credit, you know, he apparently elected not to press charges on Big Cass, saying that he needs help. You know, they know Cass is not normally like this. He was out of his mind. He wasn't in his right state of mind. And everybody pretty much forgave him, including Pat Buck. Cass released a statement through Enzo a couple of days ago. Enzo, not Cass. Enzo put this statement from Big Cass up on his Twitter page, where he apologized for everything, acknowledged that he had a problem, vows to get help. And then he tweeted himself a couple days later saying that we're all in this together. And I kind of laughed about this. And again, I'm not trying to make light of the situation, but what do you mean we're all in this together? No, motherfucker, you're in this by yourself. You're the one that can't get your shit together. Get your shit together. We're not in this with you, you know? And I think everybody should be supportive. Pat Buck, to his credit, tweeted out support of Big Cass. Come on, buddy. Keep fighting the good fight. We're all here for you. We got your back. That's incredibly cool. Fans have showed an outpouring of support to Big Cass, you know, and props to him for at least admitting this, at least knowing and swallowing his pride and saying, okay, I need help. I'm embarrassed, I'm ashamed, and I'm sorry. So I'm happy that he's apologized for this, but this in this together shit, if you got your shit together, you're not in this with him. You know, he's got the demons to fight through here, and I hope he gets the help that he needs, and I hope that when he cleans himself up, he stays cleaned up. We've seen this pattern in so many wrestlers over the years. Scott Halls and other guys, they start to get sober and then they fall back. They start to get sober and they fall back. And Cass is too young, too good looking, and too much of a damn monster to throw his life away like this. And I hope this is the wake-up call he needs and he doesn't have any more. Because usually with these track records of these guys, it generally gets worse before it gets better kind of thing. So I'm hoping this was his rock bottom and there will not be a rock bottom further down than this. Because when you start going beyond what he did last Saturday, there ain't many more options left of how much lower you can go. So I want this guy to be in a good mental place. I want this guy to be in a good physical place. And this guy clearly needs to be stone cold sober. Moderation is not an option for Big Cass. So whatever he's on and whatever problems he has, clean yourself up, dude. Because, I mean, hell, it was just a few weeks ago, there was rumors of you actually coming back into the company. He's too big to just be ignored on the sidelines. You know, somebody's going to pick him up and somebody's going to want to use him, provided that they feel they can work with him. And he's not a pain in the ass. And he's not an idiot. And he's not a drunk. You know, provided that he is on the straight and narrow and he's got his shit together, this guy can be a big star. I always said he looked like a giant jacked up Edge. You know, he's got that face, got a good looking face. You know, he's decent on the mic despite that weird accent he has. And like I said, he's a 7-foot beast. Booked properly, why can't this guy kick the shit out of Brock Lesnar if you build him as a monster. This guy could beat Braun Strowman and take Drew McIntyre to the limit, if he has his ducks in a row and he's motivated. So I wish Cass the best. I've never been a big fan of Cass. I was not even really that concerned when he got released because I didn't really like him. There's a few things about him I didn't like. I didn't like the stories we heard backstage. I didn't like some of his attitude problems, some of his arrogance problems, things like that. And then some of his drug and alcohol problems, which I love wrestlers who have had a lot of problems. Right behind my head right here, right behind this ear. Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 12 plaque. He's one of my freaking idols in wrestling. But I acknowledge what an asshole he was in the 90s. So there are guys in wrestling that have done a hell of a lot worse than Big Cass that I love and admire. Guys like Shawn, guys like Jake Roberts, guys like Scott Hall, guys like Kurt Angle, guys like that have just had problem after problem after problem and have never been able to get themselves cleaned up. Cass is still early on in all of this. He has a chance to put the brakes on this before it even gets started. He's still young and he's still got a life ahead of him. So provided he understands that, I think Cass can be just fine. And he can have a redemption story now, and realize that I never want to go back to those ways again. I want to be motivated. I want to be driven. I want to be positive. And whatever he needs to do, whatever kind of help you need, whether it be, psychological or whatever, I hope he gets it. I hope he gets himself cleaned up, because I would hate to see a 7-foot guy that looks like, to steal a phrase or a nickname from my brother, Matt Morgan, the blueprint. He really is a close blueprint of what you want in terms of size and physique, at least when he's in shape. Maybe not when he was pudgy, but some of the photos we saw of him in the last year or so working indie shows, he is ripped and he looks great. So Cass, get your shit together. We hope to see you back real soon. That is going to do it for all of my notes. So I'm going to go in here to the chat now and see if you guys want to ask me any questions before we get out of here. And another thing that I'm going to be implementing on the podcast here going forward, and I've been talking to you guys about a revamping of the Patreon page. I am starting to work on that behind the scenes, getting some ideas. And I'll probably start this next week, if not the week after. But at the end of every podcast, I'm going to answer Patreon questions. So if you are a supporter on Patreon, I'll put up a post up every week, or you can just send them to me directly on there. And any questions that are asked from my Patreon supporters will be answered in every single podcast at the very end. So that's not in the works yet. That's in the works, but it's not official yet. But that'll be coming. Let me see if you guys have any good questions for me right now before I get the hell out of here. Cass is bugging out. Yeah, he was bugging out. Let's bring back the retro tag belts. I agree 100%, Dorian Moore. Another thing that I want, I say this all the time, you hardcore listeners, you know how I feel about this, but I desperately, and I mean desperately, want the black leather strap on the Intercontinental title. I was so happy when they brought back the new design or the old design, because I thought the one that they switched to was ugly as hell. So bringing back the classic look was great, but they kept the white strap on it. And I don't know why. I just hate the white strap, and I really want the black strap. So if they can bring back the classic tags and the white strap and the winged eagle, I'll be a happy guy. Yeah, and I agree with Asuka. I don't even care about the language barrier or anything like that. Nakamura's entertaining as hell, and he can't speak any either. But Asuka is, and plus they had Asuka over. She's already won the title and had some big matches and beat big opponents and had big WrestleMania matches. So everything is there. Everybody likes Asuka. She's awesome. I do not understand. I do not understand WWE's lack of confidence in her at all. And did I miss anything else too? Byron and Tom on Main Event. Yeah, right. And that's another show I've never watched. I've never watched the Main Event. When does the Main Event air? Is it on the network or is it on YouTube? I actually never see it. And Brian Spencer, yeah, thank you. No, I was not really a fan of the split pay-per-views, only because I thought there was too many of them. And I did not like, because weren't they doing 2 a month? Weren't they doing a Raw and a SmackDown every month? And this was before the network. We were paying for this shit. I mean, I wasn't. But what are they going to do there with the pay-per-views? If you want your brands to be exclusive and have their own identities, I think putting the pay-per-views together are a bad idea, but it might be the only way to do it, to stack a good card. And you're going to have to continue doing it the way you're doing it, switching between the Raw and SmackDown announcers. To me, as far as how good your card looks on paper, that's probably the best way to do it, but it might not work out that way. I guess we didn't even talk about this. Has WWE even mentioned what the hell they're going to do? I don't know if they want to alternate or how it's going to work. But yeah, it is going to be kind of weird with that, because if you want your brands to be exclusive, but you have them on the same pay-per-view. I don't know. Sometimes that can be fun. When it was first started in 2002, I thought that was fun. When you can have the two champions come face-to-face in the hallway, backstage, you know, shit like that's cool. So they might be able to go back to that. Becky sucks big time, bro. Just saying. Now, you can say that all you want. You're grossly incorrect. Dominique, thank you for the $2, dude. Appreciate your super chat and awesome to see you in here. Who gonna face the Raw tag team now? The Raw tag team champions. It means Ziggler and Rude, right? Who's gonna face them? I don't know. I don't think it's gonna be Seth and Strowman anymore. There's lots of teams to choose from. You got the War Raiders sitting there, but I think maybe Rude and Ziggler run with these belts for a while. Why put them together, put the belts on them, and take it off of them a month later? Let's get them similar outfits. Let's mash up their music, and let's have them go on a run. Why not? What else are you going to do with those guys, you know? And do we really need to see the tag team titles change hands all the time? I don't think we do. Ha. JJ Richardson, what's up, man? Good to see you in here. Good to see you showing up, but I am about to be bouncing out of here. So that's going to wrap it up for me. We got a lot in just under 2 hours. And this will be, hopefully, for those of you keeping tabs on my technical difficulties here, I did a lot of equipment upgrades. One of those upgrades was a new camera, a nice HD 4K camera that died 2 months after I got it. And it took me forever on the phone with the tech support people to have them, because they're like, well, we think we're going to get this ready or get this working for you. It's probably a driver or a firmware issue or something like that. And I'm like, I'm telling you. So after like an hour with these guys on the phone, of them telling me to do everything I already did, I finally get them to admit the camera's dead, and they're sending me a new one. It's just not here yet. I almost did this podcast off camera, but then I decided to flip on the old camera at the last minute. So hopefully, you know, in one more week, everything will be a little bit sharper looking here on the channel or on the podcast. And like I said, we're going to start doing a brief Q&A with Patreon questions at the end of every podcast and start trying to develop a format for these going forward. And I appreciate all you guys' patience and your willingness to listen to me ramble about pro wrestling. So you guys have a great rest of your night. Have a great weekend. Feel free to tweet me. Shoot me a follow at GoodMicWork on Twitter. I don't have that crazy of a weekend going on. So if you want to chat some wrestling, if you have some questions for me, I'll try to be vocal on there and do a little bit of chattering on Twitter this weekend. Otherwise, tune into the channel this Monday night. I'll be up here live reacting to Monday Night Raw. And if anything crazy happens in the next 48 hours, I'll come up here and do a mic drop on it. And on the 26th, what day is the 26th? Today's the 20th. 6 days from now. So we're talking Tuesday or something. I will be up here with a brand new This Day in History. So keep an eye out for that as well. It was a show that I attended live, Unforgiven, 1999. And I can even be seen in the opening of that pay-per-view holding up a sign. And there was a little car accident that I was involved in after that show involving Chris Jericho, Edge, and Christian. And I will talk all about that on the 26th. On a brand new This Day in History. So y'all be good. Thanks for hanging out, and have a great weekend. Peace.